All right, welcome back. So in the last part, we color corrected this photo and we went from this to this. I know that that first video was slightly technical. In case you were having problems with that step, don't worry. You can even start with this step, what we're doing with the skin cleanup. And like I told you before, you can also do color correction later on. Or if you didn't understand that process well, you can just try to do things on your own. Just like with the other tools I showed you, like with the hue saturation tool or the camera raw filter. It's up to you, but the main process starts now, which is going to be of the skin cleanup. And the first thing that we're going to do in this process, now the main step is going to be frequency separation, which is going to come slightly later on, probably from the next or the next to next video. But right now we're going to focus just on removing some of the blemishes on the skin, and this is referred to as the basic skin cleanup. Okay, this just serves as a good base to start off with, because there are going to be some little tiny blemishes that is always better to remove them before we go on to frequency separation, which is going to make the actual difference on the skin. This process of cleaning up the skin can also be done during frequency separation. I'll probably show you that slightly later on. But right now, because this is a beginner's course, we'll go in a very step-by-step manner. So I'm just going to use a very simple tool to clean up some little blemishes that we are going to be seeing here. And the tool that we're going to be using for this process is the spot healing brush tool, which you can find here. A very popular tool. If you've done my basic course on Photoshop, where we teach everything, all the basics of Photoshop, this was one of the tools that was covered, right? But let's try to just do some basic cleanup here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to zoom in the shot. I'm just pressing Control and plus. You can if you have a Mac, you can press Command and plus. Right? So I'm just zooming in, and if you press the minus, it zooms out. And obviously, most of the times we'll be zooming in a lot in this course because we have to work on fine details on the skin. So one of the functions that's really going to help you just move around very well when you're zoomed in. For example, let's say if you're zoomed in something like this and the whole face is not fitting in the frame, what we can do is if you just hold down space, the space bar, you can see this, it turns into this hand icon, and then what you can do is you can just use your mouse to just move around. And it just makes it very easy when you're working with any tool to go down, to go up, to move anywhere, especially when you're zoomed in, right? So let's start this process. Also, one more thing I would like to point out, as I've already told you in the video beforehand, I'm going to be telling you where the Wacom tablet is really helpful. This is not one of those steps, so it doesn't really matter if you have a Wacom tablet or just a mouse. The spot healing basic cleanup is okay even with a mouse. It's not really going to make too much of a difference, though I'm using a Wacom tablet for most of the things that I'm going to be showing you. But in this step, it's absolutely fine if you have the mouse also. All right, so let's start. Now, a common mistake made by beginners is that they just take this tool and they start using it. But remember, we have to do everything in a non-destructive way. All right, so what we're going to do is, a lot of times you're going to be seeing this, that we'll not be working on our main layer. Okay, what we're going to do most of the times is we're going to click on this icon here down below, which is like a plus sign with a square. This just means we're creating a new layer. So when I do this, you can see that we have got this layer 1, and a lot of times we'll be doing the edits on this so that it's non-destructive, and if we make any mistake, we can simply delete this layer. It doesn't affect our original layer, but a lot of tools won't allow you to also do this. I'll mention that time, and there we'll just have to work on our image itself. But right now, the spot healing brush tool allows us to work on a separate layer, and the reason for that is when I select the spot healing brush tool, you can leave these options as it is, but there's one option which you'll have to definitely tick in this case, which is sample all layers. Okay, so make sure that that is selected, because if I don't click on this, let me first show you how this tool works. So if I click on sample all layers, it's sampling all the data from the layers beneath, okay, which is very important in this case because the blemishes are on these layers and not on this layer itself. There's just a blank new layer that we've actually created to use the spot healing brush tool. And if you're getting confused, don't worry. Once I start working on this, this will become easy. So right now we're doing the correct thing. On a separate layer, sample all layers is selected. And then how the spot healing brush tool works is, you can just basically, you get this cursor, this circle here, which is the size of the brush. You can increase or decrease the size using the square bracket keys. So the left square bracket key decreases the size, the right square bracket increases the size. You can also do this from here, increase or decrease the size, okay? But this is much more convenient to do it from the keyboard. So once, let's figure out a blemish that we want to remove. Let's say, for example, this. Also, one more very important point I want to make, which is slightly funny, is that whenever you do this basics cleanup process, make sure you wipe your monitor clean, because if there's something on the monitor, sometimes it's tough to fathom whether that's on the monitor, your screen, or actually on the skin, and you might just keep on pressing this or using this spot healing brush tool and the thing just doesn't go away, and then you realize it's on the screen, so it can just become a bit frustrating. Okay, so just make sure your monitor screen is absolutely wiped clean before you start this process. Okay, so for example, this is definitely on the skin, and it's a very simple tool, like the name suggests, spot healing. So you figure out the spot, and then you're just gonna click on it, and this is just gonna go away. Okay, so how this works is that whichever area you highlight, Photoshop is intelligent enough, its algorithm is intelligent enough to figure out and fill that with something that was surrounding it, and it just stitches in place of that, and it's almost seamless and works very well on most of the cases. Okay, so you can see how easy that was. Now, if I just press Control Z to undo this, what you're going to find is, so we've got our spot back, and if I hadn't clicked on Sample All Layers, okay, that means right now the spot healing brush tool is only sampling this layer, which actually does not have anything. So if I do try to remove this now, this won't really work because there's no data here, right? So we want to sample, the data is on this layer, and because we color corrected, so the color correction is on this layer. We want Photoshop or the spot healing brush tool to take in the data from both the layers, hence we are going to click on sample all layers. Okay, and now if we do this, this is going to work. So let's try to remove this blemish. It's gone. I won't really consider these as blemishes. These are just a part of her skin, and they look good in my opinion. So there's no point in removing. I think they're called freckles if I'm not wrong, but there's no point in removing. Let something that is natural, let it remain on the skin. We're just looking for those blemishes which should not be there. For example, something like this. Okay. Also, this process depends on your client a lot. If you're doing this professionally, make sure you know from them what is it that they want, what they consider as blemishes, because sometimes it can be a sensitive issue, this particular step, right? But we don't want to get into all this. I'm just showing you how to basically do these things. So we can just get rid of these blemishes here. See, he's doing a great job. Maybe this part is slightly more strong, so I can just get rid of this. And we all have blemishes, right? I mean, it's every person has, and unless and until you really have a very good makeup artist, these things are just going to show, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, this is a birthmark. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Birthmarks are good, but again, if your client wants it removed, you can remove it using this tool like this. It will also go, but I'm not going to do it here. You see some blemishes here. Something here, this, and even if you don't get it perfect on this stage, it's absolutely fine, because like I said, you can even do this step after frequency separation. Okay, right now you don't know what frequency separation is. It's going to be a step which is going to come soon, which does the majority of the skin editing thing. So you can do this after this also, but try to get, if there's anything prominent, there's no harm in getting rid of things here. And this particular edit, this is pretty easy because we don't have a very major problem, which is of stray hair. We have a bit of it here, but I think that's fine. But a lot of times you must have seen that a lot of hair just comes on top of the main parts of the skin, and we're going to be seeing that in the next edit. The next edit, the basic cleanup, is going to be actually slightly tougher than this. Since this was the first image, I thought I'll probably start off with something which is easier. Okay, maybe just a little bit on the eye here. And I think this is good to go. Let's see the before and after. So we have this layer. If I just hide this, right, you can see that's a good enough difference. So before and after. So that's a good difference. Now, this is the beauty of working with on a separate layer. Let's say that, you know, I'm doing this and maybe I did not want to get rid of this. Maybe I've overdone things, you know. Then what you can do is you can just open up this layer. You can take your eraser tool from here and you can just, you know, run it here and it just comes back, because what we're doing is we're just erasing whatever we did on this particular layer. So our blemish just comes back, and I think this is good to go. So don't overdo this step, just a basic cleanup, and now we're all set for the more advanced steps, which are going to start from the next video onwards. So I'll see you there. Bye for now.